last year, so 2007, and for 11 years I headed up their international businesses. I was brought across to CNN in 1996 to really take the international network, the English language version of CNN, to the next level, after Gulf War I. So didn't really plan on being there quite that long, but took early retirement in March of last year, since when I've been actually doing nothing, which is great, because I've been working since I was 17, so worked for about 42 years without much of a break. So I was determined to take that break last year, which is what I did. But now I've set up my own little media consultancy, still living in the States. I'm now a US citizen, so operating out of Atlanta, working for clients in New York and also overseas as well. Before I joined CNN, I was at the BBC for a really long time, for 26 years. And when I left the BBC in 1996, I was head of newsgathering.
You've been a journalist then basically all your life?
Yes, I have. I left school at 17 with next to no qualifications. They always say that journalism is the last refuge for scandals and fools. So I started in newspapers, local newspapers on the south coast of Britain. When I was 17, did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then joined the BBC when I was about 21, I guess.
You're also quite famously caught in a sticky situation, shall we say, in 1980, in the hostage situation in the Iranian Embassy in London. Tell us a little bit about that. I know it was a big event then, but did that change your life?
Yeah, a long time ago. 1980, what's that? My maths is right, it's nearly 30 years now. Yes, I think it probably did, actually, for the following reason. I always wanted to stay in the field, to be a field reporter, or to be a field producer, or to be a field assignment editor, whatever. I think people react differently to those sorts of situations, and I was not. This was not a long siege, but it ended in a very bloody way. Margaret Thatcher deployed these special forces in Britain after 6 days to break the siege after they murdered one of the hostages. But I'd actually been released about 4 days earlier, having been there for, I guess, about a day and a half. But I'm not sure that that type of ordeal is something that you ever forget, clearly. And in my case, it really sort of changed my career. I figured I didn't want to spend that amount of time in the field, didn't want to go to war zones and stuff, which some people earn their spurs from doing, and really started a pretty slow trajectory towards middle and then senior management. So yes, it did change my life. Also changed the way in which I think about journalist safety, the fact that the media profession has been until fairly recently somewhat in denial when it comes to taking care of themselves. And on occasion, some of their employers and managers have been in denial as well. This is a profoundly dangerous profession we live in, and we need to take care of ourselves.
You're referring, for example, to Alan Johnston when he was caught in Beirut recently?
Well, I guess that's the most recent example. But the BBC, certainly the BBC that I left and the BBC that I know now takes the issue of safety for its staff really seriously. Equips them, trains them, cares for them before assignments and after assignments too. And occasionally lightning strikes. In Alan's case, he's not a friend, but he is an acquaintance. He was looking forward to leaving Gaza after being there for a very long time, and had, if you like, been through all the safety training, and BBC does a lot of safety training, and curiously, or ironically, if you like, had simulated a hostage-taking situation, and his hostage simulators said that the next time this happens to Alan, it's going to be for real, and it was for real. So the profession is inherently dangerous. All we can do is to try and prepare journalists and camera crews and people who work with them, translators, drivers, I draw no distinction, prepare them for what's going to happen and enable them to cope a little better.
You're on a much nicer assignment today, here at Indigo Pearl for an iGenius Summit, World Summit. You've also been talking here. Tell us a little about what you've been saying here and what you think of both the conference and the hotel.
Well, the location is spectacular, and the issues that we're talking about here and the issue that I've been talking about really is clustered around, editorial integrity, clustered around to what extent has the have people worldwide lost some faith in the traditional media? Are journalists not a particularly popular breed at the moment, if you like? And I think there's something in that. Are they less popular than lawyers and politicians? And I think there's something in that as well. And there are a variety of reasons for that, but that's not really the issue. I think the issue is that there's such an explosion of information now. People have so many opportunities to go off on the internet, or on social networking sites or on blog sites, and on their own information quest, that journalists have a new and rather special responsibility now to, if you like, decide what they want to do about the world. Do they, as I would like to, if I have a legacy, I'm not a great person for talking about legacies, but if I had a legacy, I'd like it to be that, I made a bit of a difference in 40 or 50 years in the profession, and I think that's a pretty honourable, ambition to have. I do think the profession is very important. I do think that journalists are not particularly important themselves, but what they do is important. So what we've been discussing today, here in wonderful Phuket, is have social networking sites, has the new disruptive technology like YouTube and Facebook and Flickr and Bebo completely overwhelmed traditional media? Has traditional media lost its way? Does it need to reinvent itself? Which is a pretty fascinating debate, and we had a good to and fro this morning.
So, for example, you said journalists maybe not so popular. Is that partly why people want to put their own news up and their own pictures, their own video, all kinds of other ways of media, as you say? Is that the reason?
Yeah, listen, everybody here, you, me, everybody in this hotel is a news gatherer now. If you like, and it's not a black art anymore. There's no alchemy associated with it, and the reason is this. This has made everybody, a news gatherer, whether it's a PDA or whether it's a mobile, and whatever the next technology is. We're all news gatherers. There are very few major events now in the world, and there have been a number of recent ones. The obvious one was the tsunami 2 years ago here, where most of the really compelling, really visceral, and passionate video came from people who either lived here or were staying here as tourists, and the material was freely offered via the internet or freely offered direct to broadcasters long before journalists like you and me got here, long before, in some cases days before journalists got here. There have been plenty of examples since then and before then where this is now the trend that's happening. A couple of recent ones spring to mind this week, in Lhasa in Tibet, stills and a little bit of video coming out. Myanmar last year, maybe the most compelling recent example, the most historic event, I would argue, in the last decade, if not this century, the execution of Saddam Hussein. Video coverage provided not by the Iraqi authorities, because their video was rather poor, not by the US administration, but by a prison guard who used his cell phone camera, a lot less sophisticated than this one, and he filmed that hanging in all its detail, with all the audio and all the the argument that was going on in the minutes and seconds before Saddam Hussein's execution, and he distributed it around the world, and he got nothing for that, but actually went to jail for it. So he represents at one extreme the new news gatherer. So you're right, everyone is now a news gatherer, and I think that brings new and different responsibilities to conventional news providers now. They just have to get over it. It's happening, and they need to know how to handle it.
Absolutely fantastic. That was an incredible interview.